Hey, I'm Dan,
And I'm Derek.
and welcome to a little project we're calling the Gleeful Globe.
So we realize that 2020 hasn't been the most amazing year for all of us, especially with all the emotional headlines that are going around.
We figured that we should find and spread gleeful news to cheer everyone up and keep us moving forward.
So without further ado, let's move on to our first piece of good news.
Well, as over 4 months have passed since the stay-at-home order, I'm sure all of us are wondering, how long will this last? Well, an experimental vaccine has been showing promising results, proving safe and generating immune response when being tested.
And the way that it works is that it creates antibodies that are directed toward the spike protein. And that is what the virus uses to bind and enter a cell.
It was well tolerated and prompted neutralizing antibody activity during tests. The vaccine is set to enter phase 3 of testing in the last week of July, and we hope to have the final results on the vaccine safety and effectiveness by the end of the year. So, rest assured people, treatment is on its way.
Another good news event that happened in the past week is that, according to University of Houston, researchers have been able to create filters that trap and kill 99.8% of coronavirus that lands through it. This filter is also able to be used in movie theaters, airplanes, airports, and cruise ships to stop corona.
The filter is made from commercially available nickel foam, heated to 200 degrees Celsius.
This filter is meant to be one of the frontline defenses for the indoor environments that are going to be used where it's most important, such as a school, medical facilities, and public transportation.
And it can potentially be used to stop the spread of other airborne diseases. Moving on. Everyone really hates doing their taxes, to be honest. It's long, it's arduous, there are lots of forms to fill out, but these people want to be taxed. 83 millionaires have signed an open letter to their respective governments to increase tax rates on upper-class citizens like them in order to boost economic recovery from COVID-19. The letter is signed by Abigail and Tim Disney, Jerry Greenfield from Ben & Jerry, director Richard Curtis, among other millionaires representing nations like Spain, the UK, the US, Russia, Netherlands, Germany, New Zealand, Canada, and more.
The charities Millions for Humanity are contributing greatly to the people in need, but it does have their limitations, because it is the government that is maintaining and running the ambulances, hospitals, and those public services that people need.
The millionaires are calling governments to raise taxes immediately, substantially, and permanently. Now, raising taxes will help address issues that can impact humanity for decades, like funding for global warming or providing much-needed care for people.
And this letter means a lot because it translates into unity at the midst of a global pandemic. It is good to know that the privileged are also trying to do their part in helping out society.
While we're thankful for the doctors, nurses, scientists, and essential workers working to combat against COVID-19, what are we doing here at home? Well, Timothy Matters, a 70-year-old from Essex, made a happiness-themed word search for the Queen of England. One of the Queen's ladies-in-waiting, Philippa de Pass, sent him a letter back to thank him.
He wanted to do something to cheer her up during the pandemic, and his mom also stated that he is always very kind and giving and thinking of others, but he wouldn't let anyone else have the original copy because it was meant just for the Queen. The next part of good news is about a boy who was abandoned at a hospital twice and was adopted by a man named Peter. Tony Mutabazi's birth parents gave him up for adoption, and he was in foster care till the age of 4. Then his adoptive parents abandoned him in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Peter Mutabazi was contacted by a foster care worker and was asked to take Tony in for a weekend since he had been a foster parent for 3 years. He knew that he had to do more than just house him for a weekend once he heard the story and decided to give him a home since he had the space.
Tony was officially adopted in November of 2019. And once Tony came home, he instantly called Peter his dad and was proud to be his son.
Peter himself had ran away from an abusive household when he was just 10 years old and lived in Uganda. Someone took him under the wing, and he now sees his adoption of Tony as paying it forward. Well, we're thankful that Peter is able to give Tony a wonderful, loving home where he's able to be cared for.
The next piece of good news is that wild bison are finally returning back to England's forests for the first time in 6,000 years. In the spring of 2020, 1 male and 3 female bison were released back into Britain, hoping to naturally reproduce the population of the European wood bison, along with having dramatic positive effects on the environment.
They could be a solution to Britain's population loss. The release is part of a controlled trial to see if the species can reinvigorate forest ecosystems more effectively than humans.
The species mainly existed in captivity, with the majority of the wild ones residing in Poland, and the rest generally being scattered throughout Eastern and Southern Europe. Bison consume weak or dead trees, which is then able to turn it into food for other animals. Along with that, it's also able to produce patches of sunlight where other plants and animals can grow.
Once the bison have started to have an impact on the area, the project responsible for the release hopes to also release other animals such as pigs to recreate the former glory of the area. While malnutrition is one of the biggest problems that we've had to tackle here in the 21st century, a recent report by the UN has found that malnutrition in India has decreased by about 60 million people within the last decade. Other countries in Asia are also seeing a strong decrease.
In many parts of the world, food security has been improved dramatically over the last several decades. And in most lands that are run by communism, improvements have been seen over the last 15 years. The United Nations have attributed these developments to economic progress and better access to basic goods and services.
The UN report also calls on governments in India and China and other nations to stress nutritional value in agriculture and to try and reduce food waste and production and transportation costs. A Massachusetts-based nonprofit has started donating bridal gowns to healthcare workers on the corona front lines. Although they usually only donate to military wives, they feel that healthcare workers' bravery during the pandemic justifies them as heroes.
They ship dresses across the country, and they hold local events where brides can come and try on dresses. And although the nonprofit only has 7 people, they have been able to donate thousands of dresses.
And that's all the good news we have planned for this episode.
We hope that you guys enjoyed this first episode of Gleeful Globe, and we'll be posting every Friday. So if you guys enjoyed it, make sure to subscribe and like and share to your friends.
If you come across any piece of news that cheers you up and that you'd like to share, please don't hesitate to fill us in through this link, tinyurl.com/gleefulglobe.
I've been Derek.
And I've been Dan. See you next week.